Hi, welcome to my TED Talk. I'm going to be presenting over the FAA's proposed remote ID bill for unmanned systems. It probably doesn't sound like something that is going to affect a lot of aviation, but in coming years it will affect everyone a lot. And let's get started. So you might be wondering, what is remote ID? It is described by the FAA as a license plate for drones. It's the requirement of any UAS to broadcast its ID down to the internet, and then that is then input to a supplier. So it'd be like AirMap, what AirMap is to Lance now, and then that would be broadcast to the FAA, and then the FAA would then deal with law enforcement and air traffic control and anybody else who wanted to see the information. You might be wondering, well, isn't that just a tail number? Well, not really. UAS already have an identification number that is valid for up to 3 years. Yeah. So some of the cases for remote identification of UAS are for safety. You might be wondering, what kind of a threat does this little guy pose to a big airplane? Well, this weighs about as much as a bird, and it's about the same size, and you guys know how bad birds are.
Oh, that's a lot of damage!
Remote ID would also promote accountability of pilots.
The hardpoint has been taken.
Because remote pilots would be required to connect to a remote identification system before ever taking off, and so they would have to have their whereabouts known and who they are, what they're doing, where they're doing it. Whereas with Lance, a lot of pilots don't use it because it's more of a voluntary information giving system. And another point for remote identification is so that controllers and pilots have better information on where UAS are, what they're doing, how they're operating, and even if they fly away, what way they're going, how high they are, when they're last seen maybe. And there's a lot of other arguments for it, and overall it's probably a really good thing to implement, especially as aircraft themselves become more unmanned, I guess. It might appear that the remote ID bill is a really good thing, and for the most part it is, but it does have some issues. First being that it poses a big threat to hobby UAS like this one that are home built. They're kind of sketchy, but they have no way to comply. There's no electronics in here that are capable of wirelessly connecting to a network, and so they would almost be rendered obsolete by the proposed bill. On top of that, a lot of the hobbyists are worried that the bill could lead to an over-regulation of the drone industry and squeeze out all hobby UAS, and it would just be commercial unmanned systems left. Another thing is that the proposed bill is contradictory. There's a lot of things it says that will be one way, like this would be grandfathered in where it wouldn't have to comply, and then later on in the bill it says that this would most definitely have to comply. On top of that, a lot of aircraft would be rendered obsolete. A lot of the older DJIs, like a Phantom 3 or anything that you could buy from Walmart, would be rendered obsolete. But the good news is that like the new DJI Mavics and the Phantom 4s and the Inspire 2s and a lot of their other stuff that's in their current lineup would be capable of complying because it is actually designed for that system already. They already use a system a lot like it. But that's not a lot of drawbacks for what this bill could bring about safety-wise. So here's what I think about the whole FAA's proposed remote ID situation. I think whether or not hobbyists like it, it's coming.
And I'm coming! You coward. You think you're a tough guy. I hate you, coward!
The comment period to say what you want about it closed on March 2nd, and I believe they had plans to have it implemented or begin implementation by July of this year. It'll definitely affect controllers and aviation traffic in the future as big businesses such as Amazon, DHL, and FedEx implement unmanned delivery systems. And I hope that the whole proposed remote ID is for the better and that it promotes safety while not destroying hobby aviation.